Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Surai Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Netapaharini. Good evening and namaste everybody. Can you all hear me at the back also? Good. Oh, they can hear me. They can hear me. Revered Swami Sarvapriyananda Maharaj, Revered Swami Atmagyanananda Ji Maharaj, or Brahmachari Kumar Maharaj, devotees and guests. It gives me immense pleasure to be here this evening with you, and I hope in the months and years again, over the years, I'll be coming here quite often, regularly. By the way, when I first saw this hall a few weeks back, I'd come here, some devotees had brought me to take a look at this place. The first thing I felt was, what a magnificent place for teaching Vedanta. So, I have no doubt, in the months ahead, this hall will be full. The pitch that Revered Maharaj made about contributing, I was just reminded, in California, there was this pastor, a lady who led a particular church, and she told me this, a little joke about contributing. Her church was pretty wealthy. So she was saying that, the different denominations, the dollar bills were talking to each other. How did they spend their summer? And the $100 bill said, I mostly sat in bank vaults, And the $20 bill said, I went from Costco to Costco to Costco. And the $1 bill said, oh, I went from church to church to church. Yes. The Vivekananda Vedanta Society of Connecticut. This is what I want to talk about today. Vedanta and Vivekananda and the Vedanta Society. Vedanta has been around for thousands of years, and it would have been there even without Vivekananda. Sister Nivedita says in her masterful introduction to the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, it's one thing that's really worth reading if you haven't read it. It's at the beginning of the first volume of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Just 3 pages, 3 to 4 pages. Amazing introduction. And I see how true it is. She begins with, for centuries to come, the Hindu man who would learn of his own faith, the Hindu mother, literally, it's true, the Hindu mother who would teach it to her children, they will turn to these pages. And it's happening here in America, I can see it. So there's a large diaspora now. And the question, they want to transmit it to the next generation. And the best way to understand and to be inspired about Vedanta and to pass it on is the complete works of Vivekananda. Literally what Sister Nivedita said in those pages. And she goes on to say, actually the Upanishads, the Gita, they all would have been there. Vedanta would have been there, even if our master Vivekananda had not come, it would have been there. But what was required is a retelling, a restatement of those ancient truths, 5,000 years old, for our time, in our language, something that we can relate to and be inspired by. So surcharge it with fresh power and make it available to everybody. Vivekananda says that my mission in life, one thing he says that the Vedanta which was limited to a few scholars and monks in the mountains, in forests, my goal is to bring it out and spread it in the cities. That means give it to everybody. This accessibility, this restatement, retelling, surcharging it with power, making it inspiring for us today, a philosophy of life for everybody, and making it accessible to everybody. This is what Swami Vivekananda did. But even that's not enough. It was here in the United States that one day Swami Vivekananda, he was the guest of an American family, and he came home to where he was a house guest, and the lady of the house, he said to her, today I have fallen in love. And she smiled and said, who is that lucky woman? And Swami Vivekananda said, oh, it's not a woman, it's organization. It's organization. And that's something that Swami Vivekananda was inspired about and he took away from his experiences in the United States. And he brought it back to India. He brought it back to India. You know, I often say that Hinduism is the world's largest disorganized religion. And he introduced these ideas, I would say American ideas of our organization, back into the body of Hinduism. And today, if you see, it's not just the Ramakrishna mission. If you see all the new Hindu organizations, both in India and in the West, whether it is the Self-Realization Fellowship which came after Vivekananda, Paramahamsa Yogananda here, and then after that, the Chinmaya mission, the ISKCON, the Mahesh Yogi's Transcendental Meditation movement, even now the newer iterations, the Divine Life Society, the Arsha Vidya Gurukul, which all of these, all the new Hindu movements, you can see they are all on this template. The template on which the Vedanta societies are founded, the template which Swami Vivekananda took back to India, and he developed it there, synthesized Indian ideas and Western ideas. So organization is important. In business management, I remember back in the day in the college, in communication classes, our professor said it's important not only to get an idea, but it's also important to get the idea from point A to point B. And getting this idea from point A to point B, from the texts to the practitioners, from the masters to the students, from parents to children, and yes, to grandchildren and so on, very, very important. We have a word for this, Punner Kaj. This is a work of Punya, great Punya, a wonderful work to dedicate your life and time and resources to. So organization. It is Vedanta, it is Vivekananda, and then the Vivekananda Vedanta Society of Connecticut. It's an organization. It's very important. See, you can have texts, you can have libraries, you can have lectures, you can have YouTube lectures also. But on top of that, you still need it to be grounded in a place, a sacred place. Yes. You need it to be grounded in a sacred time. As Maharaj said, maybe the weekend, maybe once in a fortnight, a sacred time. This time I set aside. This weekend, I'm going to come to the Vedanta Society. And you need it to be grounded in a sacred community. A group of people, dedicated people, who, as Maharaj beautifully said, they participate. They give up their money, they give up their time and energy, and also, if nothing else, at least turn up and participate in this. That is the Vivekananda Vedanta Society of Connecticut. What is this essential message? In a few words, Maharaj gave me a lot of leeway. He said, you've got an hour. I won't take an hour, don't worry. I know many of you are tired. You've been here since the whole early morning. Maharaj has boundless energy. He says, no, we're not tired. But I'll give you a few central points. I'll just share that with you. What is this central message? What is it about? What is Vedanta? What is Vivekananda Vedanta? It all starts with the dissatisfactory nature of life. The existential angst. The big word is, of course, dukkha. Bhagavan Buddha is sitting right here. In my mind's eye, he's going, me. He saw the sights which made him into the Buddha. A prince made him into the Buddha. He saw this person, old age, an old person, a sick person, and a dead person. And then finally he saw a monk. Now, old age, disease, death. These are the three biggies. But even without that, in general, life has this sense of not being fulfilling. Houston Smith, in his beautiful book, The Religions of the World's Religions, beautiful chapter on Hinduism. There he says, Dharma, Artha, Kama, the goals of life. Suppose you have experienced all sorts of pleasures, and he gives a vivid description. The best of classical music, the best of gourmet food, the best places to visit, vacations, all kinds of sensual desires, everything is fulfilled. At the end of it, you still get this feeling, is that all? Age is increasing, death is coming, that's all. That was the game of life, finished. Even without any major sorrows and tragedies. Still, is there anything beyond this? The great questions of life. Does God exist? Is it possible to experience God? Who am I? What is all this game all about? There is a dissatisfactory nature of life, no matter how well things go. Most of us here, people here are from India. And the quest was to look for better opportunities, a better life. And we found it here in this new land, in the United States, in America. How much better? How much better? I can give you a number. How much better is it? 74 times better. Not some of you got it. That's the exchange rate. 1 to 70. $1 to 74. No, that's right. But even after that, as we look back upon life, all of life, what has gone well, what has not gone well, what has been satisfactory, what has not been satisfactory, is still you have to admit to yourself, at this point in life, after doing whatever we have all been doing for 20, 30, 40, 50 years in life, 60 years in life, am I completely at peace, satisfied, everything is fine, and that's it, I don't want anything more, all questions are answered, complete fulfillment, I am safe from sorrow, I have gone beyond sorrow, I have found lasting fulfillment. Atyantika dukkha nivritti paramananda prapti. We have to say, if you say yes, great. Either you're enlightened or deluded. But most of us will have to say we haven't. And that is this is the existentialists called it existential angst. It's not enough. It's not enough. What we find in life is never enough. Religion comes and says that there is a solution to all of this. We call it God. And come to religion, come to God, and you will get peace, you will go beyond sorrow and all of that. Religion promises. But Swami Vivekananda says there's a problem in it. And let's say twofold problems. One is that the advice given by religion seems to be suicidal. Life is not satisfactory. Therefore, what's the advice? Give it all up. All satisfactions, give it up, then it will be satisfactory. That means renunciation. Give up your desires. The only way to be happy in life is to give up having fun altogether. That seems to be the language of religion. It is, the core idea is correct, but the way it is put, Swami Vivekananda says, he gives a funny example of a man who was being troubled by a mosquito. And then he asks his friend for help, and the friend, in order to help him, comes and gives such a blow to the mosquito which is sitting on the man's head that it kills the man also. The mosquito is dead, but the man is also dead. And Swami Vivekananda said, often this seems to be the kind of advice that religion is giving. Notice, when I've seen, at least in India, when a kid becomes interested in spirituality, we have at least all faced it. Elders all say, oh, this is all for old age. Don't do this now. You're young, go out and have fun. Meaning thereby, have fun and spirituality are not the same thing. They're two different things. A young man wanted to become a monk, he told me. And he's in India, in Bengal, Kolkata. He told his parents are very alert about these things. He might become a monk. So the young man, the student, he said, my mother told me, I'll tell you in Bengali and translate. My mother told me, তুই কি সারা জীবন তিনটে black and white ছবির দিকে তাকিয়ে বসে থাকবি? You're going to spend your whole life staring at 3 black and white photographs. That's all. So look at the idea behind it. That it's not fun. It's not worthwhile. It's too difficult, dry. It's not life. So Swami Vivekananda says there's a truth about it. It's deeper. There is something to be understood here. The message of Vedanta. So that's the first problem. Spirituality and renunciation. How do you reconcile them? Spirituality and the life. If this is so, then it's suitable only for a few monks. As Vivekananda said, few monks sitting in the caves and forests. Not more than that. What about the rest of the world? And this was a big idea, in many religions which were heavily monastic, Buddhism, early Buddhism, Jainism all throughout, you will notice that there is a tendency that the highest spirituality is reserved for the monks. Not even nuns were second grade. And for the householders, you be good and follow these rules for lay devotees. Next life you will become a monk and then get nirvana, kaivalya, moksha, whatever it is. So there is some kind of tremendous tilt that the highest is not available until you get rid of life itself. To make life happy, get rid of life. To get rid of the mosquito of pain, get rid of the person also being bitten by the mosquito. The second problem is, this day and age, the traditional presentation of religion is difficult to swallow actually, for many, many people, especially in the advanced countries of the West, but it's the same kind of society is now increasingly there across the world. India, somebody said that you all who have come from India, for you India is in the 1970s, 80s, 90s at the most. It's changed tremendously. A lot of people who go back to India, they say, when we look at our grandsons and granddaughters, they seem more American than we are. We feel sort of backdated mode hai amader. We feel a little outdated, obsolete. So it's changed tremendously. The same feeling, it's difficult to swallow. Ken Wilber says, there's three problems that the millennial and post-millennial generations have with traditional religion. One is, the first and most important, is that they fight among each other. People don't want this continuous criticism of each other, and I alone have the truth, all that is false. Swami Atmarupanandaji, I asked him, how did you come to Vedanta? He was in South Carolina, I think. Right. And he said that, I was interested in religion, but I found out that it was a heavily Christian area. And he said that every little church believed that the other people going to the other church across the street, they were all going to go to hell. Then everybody else is wrong, and we are alone right. And so I got the idea that maybe everybody is wrong. That's more logical. Later he came to Vedanta, he said, when I discovered this teaching that actually everybody is right. The core teachings in every tradition is right. And he said that sort of resonated so deeply with what I felt. The second thing Ken Wilber says is that irrationality, that the unwillingness to accept what modern science and modern knowledge is already, it's mainstream now, and yet you keep on insisting on certain things because they are in the text. Somehow you feel you have to defend something that's in a 500-year-old, 1,000, 2,000-year-old text. The third problem, he says, Ken Wilber, why people don't like religion today, is especially here, especially on the East Coast and in California and other places, is the unwillingness to keep up with changes in values. Vedanta has an answer for these questions. Vedanta has an answer. Rational, logical, and acceptable presentation of religion, spirituality in this day and age. Einstein, who was not very far from here in Princeton, New Jersey, there was a letter written by him to one Eric Gutkind. Eric Gutkind was a modern Jewish theologian. He wrote books presenting Judaism in a modern way. He sent his book to Einstein for a review. Einstein, he was Jewish. Einstein wrote back in uncharacteristically harsh language. He was a gentleman, but he wrote back in a harsh language. He said, I consider the teachings of Judaism and indeed all the religions of humanity to be a collection of human weaknesses, he said. And he said, I do not believe in the God, the personal God who controls this universe. He said that, so that was his reply. But was he not spiritual? Did he completely discount the idea of spirituality and religion? Actually, he did not. I think he was a pretty spiritual man. He said, I believe in Spinoza's God. I believe in an impersonal principle which permeates this universe and whose manifestations are the workings of this universe which science can discover and understand. Spinoza's God Einstein, I don't know how much he was aware of Vedanta. Interestingly, I heard about the East Side Center. They have these archives. Swami Nikhilanandaji in the 1940s, 50s and 60s especially, he was very well connected to the New York Society at that time. They discovered an invitation card from Einstein inviting the Swami for dinner. So there was some connection. We don't know details about this. But Einstein, I think he would have been very happy to see what kind of spirituality is taught by Vedanta. It's pretty similar. What Spinoza says is pretty similar. Not pantheistic exactly, but pretty similar. What is it that is being taught here? One way would be to look at, for example, one of the representative Upanishads, the Isha Upanishad. The first line of the Isha Upanishad, which Swami Vivekananda was very, very fond of. Isha vasyam vidagam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha magridha kasya svidhanam. You just take the first line. Mahatma Gandhi, he said, if all of Hinduism were to disappear, all of it, and only the first line of the first mantra of the Isha Upanishad remained, all of Hinduism would remain. Mahatma Gandhi said that. Why is it so important? What does it say? It says, whatever there is in this universe, cover it all by God. It is all to be covered by. Vasya means to cover. Literally it means that. Cover it. All the moving and the non-moving, the living and the non-living, the vast and the small, the quasars and the quarks. It is all to be covered by God. Covered means what? Swami Vivekananda says, not by a false kind of optimism that it is all God. No. Covered means to discover. The God that Vedanta speaks about, the spirituality that Vedanta speaks about, is a living, ever-present reality. By what I mean by ever-present is, it's not a God who is there in heaven but not here. No. It's there in heaven, sure, but here also. It's not then, after death, post-mortem God. No. Now also. Then definitely, but now also. It's not a God who is other than this universe. It is other, transcends, but also appears as this universe. I remember meeting, I mentioned this earlier, Professor Gayatri Spivak, Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak, whom you would not associate with any kind of spirituality and religion, but she's actually a disciple of Swami Shankaranandaji. Her father is a disciple of the Holy Mother, Ma Sharada. And one reason which turned her off religion, she told me that as a kid, when she used to visit Belur Math, everybody would say, she's the daughter of so-and-so who's the disciple of Ma Sharada. She says, I didn't like that at all, this whole disciple business. She wanted to be known in her own right, not as a daughter of somebody who's the disciple of Ma Sharada. I was thinking, I didn't say it to her, I'll say it now. I was thinking that for her, those who know of her, you know that she is really famous. She's a superstar in modern academia. For her, it's already pretty much a guru-disciple relationship. They say about her, she doesn't have students, she has disciples. So, what she was trying to avoid, I think, is still going on. Anyway, the point I want to make is, she told me that, Swami, don't tell me about anything other, supernatural, beyond. Whatever you say has to be here, ekanisha. And she said, these are the words of the Holy Mother. She was quoting Ma Sharada. In one particular context, I won't go into it. She said to a disciple, Ma Sharada said, Ja ache baba ekhanei ache. Whatever is here. And I took it in a very simple sense, but Gayatri Spivak said to me that ki kotha hai Maharaj? What a tremendous statement. That if you can understand spirituality as what is here right now, this, can you have a spiritual understanding of this? Wonderful. I think it's a tremendous thing to say actually. Isha vasyam idam sarvam. Whatever there is in this world, everything that you experience, everybody that you experience, you have to cover it by God, means to discover God there. How do you discover God? Shankaracharya, he gives an example which is, alright, I'll give it to you and see what you make of it. It's a little old kind of example. In Hindu temples, you use sandalwood. He says Chandana Agaru Adi. I remember, we have done this in Belur Math also. You have to rub and scrape the sandalwood. It's a block of sandalwood which comes, and to make chandan. There's white chandan and red chandan and so on. And apparently he says that if you put it in that block of sandalwood in water, a kind of layer forms over it over time which is foul smelling. Sandalwood is fragrant, but it smells foul because of that layer. So what do you do? To recover the natural fragrance, he says the natural fragrance of sandalwood is right there. It is recovered by, you rub it and scrape it and uncover it. So, where are we going now? Cover everything by God is equal to discover God there. How do you discover God right here? You uncover God, because God is right here. From cover to discover to uncover. How do you do that? This beautiful example of the ornaments and gold, and clay and pot. You come across this again and again in the Upanishads. The implements of iron, which are made of iron, the pots made of clay, or the ornaments made of gold, whether it's a necklace or a ring or a bracelet, the reality underlying all of them is the same. What do I mean by reality? I'm not going to go into the details of Vedanta. I hope to come back again and tell you all those secrets. I'm not going to say everything right now. But there is one reality which underlies this appearance of many. Today, I was coming by train, Amtrak. There's a new station, for those who don't know. I didn't know. There's a new station in New York, Moynihan Station. Beautiful new station. And they have it written in huge letters there. From the many to the one. From the one to the many, from the many to the one. So how do you go from the many to the one? You discover there's one underlying reality. When, pure being, pure existence, pure consciousness, whatever you call it. And how do you discover that? That is Vedanta. But when you discover that one underlying reality, from that perspective, the high and the low, the rich and the poor, the learned and the ignorant, the vast and the tiny, they are all appearances. The spectacular differences which you see in the world, they don't seem so different after all. Because there's this one underlying reality. Even the good and the bad, even the likable and the dislikable. That's why, that beautiful advice, Swami, those who saw the video, Swami Swananji was saying that don't cultivate too strong likes and dislikes if you want to be a monk. Why not? Why shouldn't you have strong likes and dislikes? That's the way to live life. No. Because when you have strong likes and dislikes about people and things and places and food and jobs and occupations, possessions, you are on false ground. Because those things are not literally all that different. They're not literally all that different. What is the one underlying thing? When you discover that, everything that appears in this vast world, they all appear as manifestations of that sin. You see the sameness everywhere. Unfortunately, in our books, it's translated as samadrishti, same-sightedness. Sounds like an ocular defect. Far-sighted, near-sighted, same-sighted. But it means seeing God in everything. One God in all this difference. I like this story. There's so many stories to show this in among the monks in Uttarakhand. One story I like particularly is the story of the Ganesha image. So a businessman, he had a Ganesha image made of gold, and he fell on hard days. He had to pawn it to get some money. He goes to the shopkeeper and he says, "How much will you give me for Ganesha? Ganesh ji ke liye kitna?" In the rate. So the shopkeeper, who's a jeweler, weighs it and says, "I'll give you at this rate." Good. And Ganesha comes with his ride, the mouse. So all the Hindu gods and goddesses have the vehicles of their choice. So Ganesha has the mouse. How much for the mouse? Chuha ke liye kitna? And the shopkeeper says, "It's the same rate." And the businessman was aghast. He was appalled. He said, "This is sacrilege. Ganesh ji ka jo rate, chuha ka bhi wahi rate. What the rate for Ganesha and the rate for the mouse is the same. How is that possible? You have no religion at all." And the man said, But sir, for you it is Ganesha and the mouse. For me it is gold. I am seeing gold there. I am weighing it as gold. What is that one reality which you see here, not there, which you see now, not then, which you see here within yourself and within everybody? What is that one reality based on which all this appears as manifestations of the same reality? What is that one clay from which you can see all pots as manifestations of the same clay? What is that one water from which perspective you see all waves as manifestations of one of that same water? There is one gold which use variety of ornaments. They are all just variations on that same reality. The reality is the gold, the reality is the clay, the reality is water. What is the reality here? That is the question that Vedanta answers. And you see, why is it acceptable? Because it's talking about something here. Something that even science talks about. You investigate the reality which you inhabit. Now, the traditional dualistic approach to religion, there is a God somewhere else. Is that wrong? It's not wrong. It's not wrong. If this is anything wrong about it, it's sort of just halfway house. That's the problem. Alan Watts, he says, you see the pot, then you're introduced to the idea of an underlying reality called the clay. Now if you leave it at that, pot is this experience which we have, there is a deeper reality called clay. Look for that. Then you will go around looking for clay somewhere, never find it. Because what is the clay is also the pot. It's the same thing. It's right there. But if you're told there is something which is the fundamental reality called clay, pot is not that. Alan Watts calls it the crackpot idea. That's what happens in the religions, dualistic religions. Why is it difficult for modern man? Why is it difficult for a modern philosopher or a scientist to take it seriously? Because they'll say, where is this God of yours? Where? What is this God of yours? Where is the proof for this God of yours? So in Vedanta you go further, deeper, and you discover that God in and through all of reality, including oneself. Then what happens? Then life, you see the magic works then. Swami Vivekananda says, he who runs away from life to meditate and die in a Himalayan cave has missed the way. He who plunges headlong into the vanities and superficialities of life has missed the way. Now this is interesting. If you run away from life, you have missed the way. If you plunge into life, you have missed the way. Then what is the way? These are the only two alternatives. He says the way is to defy life itself. Is to find God with whomever you are with, wherever you are. He says, you don't have to give up husband, wife, children. You find God in the husband, in the wife, in the child. You find God in all the activities that you do. Because, like the clay in all the pots, like the gold in all the ornaments, and water in all the waves, the same divinity, whether it's in the Himalayas or it's in these busy cities, whether it's in India or in the United States, it is that same reality. Somebody asked me recently, you have spoken about your experiences in the Himalayas. Don't you feel like going back there? I said, I would be most happy to be there in the Himalayas. Very, very happy. But I am perfectly happy here also. You have to find that which makes you happy in Gangotri and in Manhattan also. In the midst of an ashram and in the battlefield in Kurukshetra. Vedanta was preached not really by monks to other monks, but by a householder, a warrior, Krishna, to another householder, Arjuna, a warrior. In the midst of the Kurukshetra of life, the battlefield of life. So seeing God in everybody, seeing God in all actions, one has to live one's life. Sister Nivedita says that this is the crowning significance of our Master's life. Master, she means Swami Vivekananda. That the one and the many are the same reality. The one, Brahman, clay, gold, water, in the example. And the many, the people and things in the world and planets and atoms, and all of this, the panorama of life. They are one and the many, they are the same reality, seen by different people at different levels of spiritual experience. The transcendent and the immanent immanent are the same reality. And what is the consequence? Consequence is tremendous, and we are just beginning to scratch the understand the implications of what Vivekananda has done with Vedanta. Vedanta has taken on a huge, new, extraordinary form. We are only beginning to understand what Vivekananda has done. Nivedita spells it out. She says, henceforth, no difference between the sacred and the secular. To labor is to pray. Labor is to pray. Work and prayer. Not that they are automatically equal. So, I spend 14 hours in Wall Street, and so that means I'm praying? Not necessarily. It requires that spiritual attitude, that spiritual vision. That what you're doing in a meditation room and what you're doing in the school room and in the office, in the Vedanta Society, it's one spirituality. And to have and hold is as sacred a trust as to quit and renounce. To become a monk, or you are a parent, a father, a mother, a person pursuing a career in the corporate world or in the world of education or medicine somewhere, is as good. You can make it as spiritual as a monastic life. These are the consequences of what Vivekananda has done. And what Vivekananda has done is based on the Upanishads. The Isha Upanishad. One example I'll give and move on. How he has tweaked it. The traditional interpretation of the Upanishad and what Vivekananda has done. Isha Upanishad itself, the one I'm talking about. Cover everything by God, discover God in every being, everywhere. And then he says, Tena tyaktena bhunjitha. By that renunciation, protect this knowledge or experience life. The different interpretations are there. What is renunciation? Remember where we had started this talk with. That there is a possibility of giving up, of overcoming sorrows and sufferings in life. You give it up and try to look for God. That didn't work for most people. It's difficult to accept today. What is Vedanta's solution now? Vedanta's solution is here. Renunciation is defined, is redefined, re-understood, reimagined as not physically going from one place to another, from the city to the mountain. Not physically exchanging this dress for this dress. Not physically exchanging one set of activities for another set of activities. But rather, seeing this divinity in all beings, at all times, and in all places. This is true spirituality. This is true renunciation. Ma gridha kasya svidhanam. The Upanishad says, do not covet anybody's wealth. This seems to be a simple moral teaching. Don't covet anybody's wealth. But the commentators bring out the depth of this teaching. They say, what wealth is there to be coveted? And whose wealth? See, the entirety of this manifestation, it's an appearance of that underlying reality. Brahman alone appears as all of this. You are Brahman. You alone are appearing as this entire life which you are experiencing. From that perspective, from the perspective of Brahman, from the perspective of our real spiritual nature, everything that we experience in life is that one only. At this point, I usually tell the story of the princess of Kashi, which I love, so I'll tell you. Yeah. In ancient days, in one kingdom, in some part in India, so there was a play being staged, and they wanted somebody to play the role of the princess of Kashi in that play. And now the queen said, the prince of that kingdom was a 5-year-old boy. He's a cute little boy. Dress him up as a princess, and he can be the princess of Kashi. And they did that. And the play was a big success. And the queen liked that little boy's dress as the princess, So she said, paint a portrait. Nowadays you could take a selfie, but in those days, to call the court painter and paint a portrait of that boy. So the boy was made to pose in the dress of the princess, and the portrait was made, Princess of Kashi, dated so and so. Now many, many years passed. The little boy grew up. He became a young prince and was doing all sorts of princely things. One day, what happened was this prince was exploring the palace, old places in the palace, goes to the basement and he discovers this old painting, wipes the dust off it, and he sees Princess of Kashi, and the little princess, and then sees the date, 15 years ago. And he says, oh, this princess must be my age. And he promptly falls in love with her. And now he can't tell anybody, he's feeling a little shy about it, but he keeps thinking about her and he ignores his princely duties. The queen and the king are worried. One day the wise old minister takes the prince aside and says, tell me, what ails you? What's your problem? The prince says, well, actually I am in love. The minister said, good, who is she? Oh, she is the Princess of Kashi. Oh, Princess of Kashi, very good, a proper match, huh? Princess, you're a prince and she's the princess. So, where did you meet her? Oh, I didn't meet her. It's a painting and I found it in the basement. It's old, 15 years old, but she's clearly my age. Then the minister said, Princess of Kashi, painting 15 years ago, can you show me? They took him down there and showed the painting, and the minister said, Prince, you sit down. I have to tell you something. 15 years ago, this theatrical performance was there, and you were dressed up, you, the little prince, were dressed up as the Princess of Kashi. There is no Princess of Kashi. That one is you. Tat Tvamasi. That thou art. Now what happened to the desire of the prince for the Princess of Kashi? It disappeared. Immediately disappeared. But why did it disappear? Did it disappear because the Princess of Kashi was now unattainable, maybe she is married off to some other king? No. Is it because Princess of Kashi does not exist? Not even that. It's because the prince was the Princess of Kashi. The Princess of Kashi was nothing other than the prince. This world is our Princess of Kashi. This world is your Princess of Kashi. It appears as temptation and terror, as desire and anxiety. Swami Vivekananda says, things are dead in themselves. We breathe life into them, then we run towards them or we run away from them. It's a very profound insight. You can apply it at different levels in life, in our relationships with others, in our desires or goals in life. It's all our projection. This insight, it frees you from the prison of, we are doomed to dukkha, as Bhagavan Buddha said. It frees you from the prison of dukkha. It shows you your infinite nature. It makes the entire universe one with you. What will you desire now? It is all you. It is your Princess of Kashi. There is nothing other there outside your nature as Brahman. What do you fear? Dvitiyadvai bhayam bhavati. From the second comes fear. There is no other now. Who is the other for you now? So what a tremendous vision Swami Vivekananda brings to the ancient Vedantic teaching. Now at this point one might say, all this talk is good. I've heard always see God in everybody, everybody's God. Practically doesn't work. Somebody says a rude word, Swami Vivekananda said, slave to a nasty word, slave to a good word. To the things that the world throws at us, we react. So what is the way? How do you make this practical? And Swami Vivekananda gives powerful ways of making these practical. We'll talk about them as time comes. Basically Vedantic, the Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. You hear about these truths in different ways, different texts, different teachings. That's why this place, it is for making these truths, hearing about them again and again. It's wonderful to hear about it. It transforms once. Even just hearing about it is a great blessing. And then argue it out. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Argue it out. What are my doubts? Where is it? What is the place that I don't understand? What is it that I don't get? There are very good answers to all these questions. Manana. And once I have heard these truths, and I have got some clarity and conviction about them, then meditate upon it. Nididhyasana. Till it becomes a living reality. It really feels like that. You see it like that. That is the consummation of this Vedantic process. Anyway, we have this journey to go walk together and to share it with others also. Thank you for inviting me here. I won't even thank you. Let's be all part of the same family. As Maharaj said, this is a very wonderful insight. Even the idea of volunteer. I used to think it's such a great thing because I would see how much work is done by volunteers in New York, entire Central Park, so much volunteer work. It's an amazing thing. But higher idea, deeper idea than that, you're part of a family. Do you volunteer in the family for things? No. What a wonderful thing he said. So we will take this journey together, we'll undertake this journey together and help each other to grow spiritually and spread the light. Thank you so much. Yes?
You said that we have to have desires in life.
Yes?
And then if the desires is not fulfilled, then what happens?
Oh, I'm not saying we have to have desires in life. We have no choice in that actually. We have desires in life. That can't be helped. But why do we have desires? These are questions Vedanta takes up. Why do we have these desires? Why is it difficult to fulfill them? Why is it that nothing is ultimately fulfilling? After fulfilling so many desires also, why is it that we are not happy at the end of the process? 20, 30, 40, 50 years of life you try. Why is it that it's not enough? Is it at all possible to be fulfilled? Yes, it is. It is possible. That's the claim of Vedanta, that's the claim of all spirituality. Deep, lasting fulfillment is possible. It's called Ananda Prapti. Going beyond suffering is possible. It's called Dukkha Nivritti. That's the whole thing what Buddha taught. There is Dukkha, Dukkhacha. And there is a cause of Dukkha, which is desire. Is there a solution? Yes, there is a solution, Nirvana. Is there a method? Yes, Ashtanga Marga. The great philosopher Madhavacharya, who wrote the Sarvadarshana Sangraha, there he says, this kind of teaching, he says, Chikitsakanamiva, they are just like doctors. They identify what's the problem first. Second, is there a cause of the problem? If it's causeless, you're helpless, then you can't do anything. Is there a cause? Is there an underlying disease? Third, is there a cure? Fourth, is there some method of treatment? So that is the thing. This fourfold step is what goes on in any higher spirituality, including Vedanta. What is the problem? What is the cause of the problem? What is the solution to it? And what is the treatment? Alright. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.